Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Firstly, I have to apologise because I've got a bit of a cold and a sore throat, and so my voice may be a bit croaky and not my usual voice, so apologies for that in advance. But yeah, I'm back today with a video about Christmas for you, but this is a slightly different one to one of the ones I've been watching, and basically I wanted to talk about coping with Christmas and mental illness. Christmas is a lovely time of year for a lot of people, but for a lot of people it's also a really difficult time of year, especially when you've got a mental illness. I mean, there's so many different reasons why Christmas would be difficult, but when you've got a mental illness it can be quite hard with all the changes and everyone kind of seemingly being really happy. So I just wanted to kind of talk about a few like tips and advice and stuff that I have picked up over the years, whether that's been while I've been in treatment, while I've been in hospital, through my therapists, or just like through friends, family and things that I've learnt myself. I'm kind of splitting the video into two parts. The first part will be just about general mental health, and then the second part will be focused specifically on coping with Christmas and an eating disorder. I have experience of both, and so I kind of wanted to, I don't know, I think coping with an eating disorder at Christmas has quite specific things about it, so I wanted to kind of make sure that I addressed that. I've got quite a lot of points, so I think I'm just going to get started, and if I look down that's because I've got my notepad with all my ideas on it, so yeah, apologies if I'm not constantly looking at the camera. So my first tip for just dealing with general mental health problems, whether it's depression, anxiety, whatever it is to set realistic goals for over Christmas and just like the whole of the Christmas period basically. So it's very easy to want to do everything at Christmas and to be like really festive and to send everybody cards and buy everybody presents and do everything and go everywhere, and it can just get really overwhelming. So my advice is always to just set realistic goals. Like if you're wanting to send cards, maybe cut down your card list. That's what I've been like really trying to do this year, because I'm terrible for just like trying to send cards to everyone in my address book, and actually like it just makes me ill. It doesn't, maybe, I don't know, like maybe people don't I don't know how many people like appreciate receiving cards, and I just kind of think there's no point in making myself ill just to send people a bit of paper. If you don't want to send any cards, just pop a little message on your Facebook for all your friends just to say, I'm wishing you a Merry Christmas, but I can't send cards this year. I'm going to donate a little bit of money to charity or something like that. But yeah, just make sure the goals that you set feel realistic to you as well. Like, don't worry about what everyone else is doing. Just set goals that feel kind of safe for you. I would also recommend writing lists. I am a big list writer. I don't know, I find it easier to just have like all my thoughts written down in a list so that I kind of know what I'm doing. And also I think when you've got stuff written down in a list, it kind of takes it out of your head a bit, so you're not like worrying that you're going to forget all these things that you've got to do, because you've got it written down like on paper. And it also feels really good like going through your list and ticking stuff off. Like sometimes I will write stuff on my list at the top that I've already done, just so that I can tick like a few things off, and it just makes me feel a bit more motivated and a bit better. And for me, I think I'm quite a visual person anyway, so it helps just to like be able to see, okay, these are the things that I need to do, like maybe like dating it as well, so that you kind of write it in order of like what needs to be done first. And for me it just kind of helps with my anxiety a bit and also my motivation. So yeah, I would seriously write lists everywhere and anywhere, because for me they're a lifesaver. Something that I think is really important, not just at Christmas to be fair, but like the whole year, is to learn to say no. I am not very good at this. I am definitely a yes person. If someone asks me to do something or to go somewhere, I'll say yes, and then like tend to find that I just completely overload myself with stuff and end up feeling worse, or end up getting more and more anxious, or then having to pull out and feeling like worse than I did before. So yeah, finding like the power to just say to someone like, no, I'm really sorry, but I can't do that, or You know, if it's like a friend that you really want to meet up with, but they're suggesting something big and perhaps you can't like manage that at the moment, say, look, I don't think I can manage that, but do you want to come around for a cup of tea or something? But just, I don't know, I think it is quite empowering being able to actually like say no and take charge of your feelings and stuff. But I do just want to add to this, although it's really good to be able to say no to people, I think we also shouldn't be afraid to say yes, because you don't want to kind of go from like saying yes to everything to completely saying no to everything and then not doing anything. You want to find a happy balance. So if someone asks you out somewhere or asks if you want to do something and your initial thought is, oh no, I can't do that, like it's going to be too much, like maybe don't react like as, you know, there and then. Have a little think about it and think, actually, is this something that I could like give a go? Like, yes, it's going to be a bit scary and it's a little bit out of my comfort zone, but is it something that I feel I can push myself to do? Obviously don't push yourself to do everything, and if it's really gonna like make you more unwell, or if it's gonna really make you struggle, then honestly don't do it. But sometimes I've found like I've really not wanted to do something, but I've kind of said, okay, yeah, I'll give it a go, and actually you come away having had a really good time, or you know, your mood feels a bit more lifted. So although it's good to say no, it's also good to say yes in some like situations. Another big one, and again, not for just this time of year, but for all the time in general, is to try not to compare yourself to other people. I think certainly at Christmas it gets quite difficult, especially like I find on social media, because you get lots of lovely pictures coming up of people who've like decorated their house in like an amazing way, or they've gone like to all these Christmas markets and stuff, or they've got all their presents wrapped and stuff. And yeah, I love looking through Instagram and Facebook and stuff like that, but it is very in your face, all these kind of perfect pictures of like people's perfect lives. And yes, in reality, we kind of know that it's just a highlight reel. But when you're feeling down or rubbish about yourself already, and then all these pictures are coming up, it can be like, I suppose it can be more triggering. So I wouldn't say like stay away from social media necessarily, although if that's what you want to do, go for it. But just keep reminding yourself that that's just one picture from that person's day or week or whatever. And yes, it might look like a perfect picture and it might look like their life is perfect, but yeah, it's just a snapshot. There's so much more going on behind the scenes. You know, they may have been like really stressed and like anxious and like felt awful while they've been trying to wrap all these presents, but you don't see any of that. You just see this nicely wrapped pile of presents. So as hard as it is, I would just say like really try not to compare yourself to other people at Christmas, and just do what you want to do. You know, if you don't want to go to Christmas markets, then don't feel like you have to just because everyone else is doing it. Just do the things that make you happy and make your family happy, and yeah, do the stuff that you want to do at Christmas. Don't do it just because everyone else is doing it. Another one that kind of goes with the like realistic goals is to not put unnecessary pressure on yourself. So again, I'll like take it back to the Christmas card writing. You know, if it's going to be too much for you, don't commit to writing Christmas cards for everybody. Maybe just write like 1 or 2 to like close family and friends. Or if, I don't know, if you're going to struggle to cook your Christmas dinner for like the whole family, then perhaps ask other people if they can maybe do a dish or a course or something like that. Anything that will take a bit of pressure off yourself, just so that you don't feel like everything is falling down to you, because I know it's quite easy to want to do it all yourself at Christmas and to make it perfect for everybody else, but you shouldn't be doing that at the expense of your enjoyment of Christmas or your mental health at Christmas. You know, I'm very good at taking everything on and making like running myself down and getting to like Christmas Eve and just feeling completely overwhelmed and stressed and awful, and it's just not necessary. There's usually people who want to help. People don't mind if you don't send them a Christmas card or a present, or if the present doesn't come till January. So yeah, just take off any pressure that you can on yourself over like the festive period. Something that I was recommended quite a lot, especially when I was under a psychologist and stuff, is to have a plan of escape. And this could like be for any social situations really, but especially over Christmas. Sometimes you say yes to things and you might go, I don't know, over for a dinner or go to a social situation, and it can be quite difficult to get out of it if you start feeling anxious. So if you start feeling really panicky or anxious, or you're just too overwhelmed by the situation, plan before you go how you would get out of that situation. So I don't know, like I would often come up with an excuse in my mind of like what I would say to people if I needed to go, like, oh, I've got to get back because the dogs need to be let out, or I've got to get up early tomorrow so I need to get an early night, or something, just something like that. And yeah, okay, it might be like a little white lie, but just having that in your head is sometimes enough to get you through a social situation. So I often felt like I would go somewhere and just knowing that, okay, I know what I want to do, like if things get too much, I know how to get out of this situation, was kind of enough to not need to use it. And yeah, like I did use it sometimes, and kind of people understood. Or even if, you know, if it's people you know well, just say to them, okay, look, I'm finding this a little bit too much now, I'm gonna head home, but I'm really glad I came, or something. But just knowing that you don't have to sit there and suffer in silence, and you know, it's the worst thing being surrounded by lots of people but just feeling completely overwhelmed. So don't feel like you have to sit there and endure all those horrible feelings. You know, the fact that you've made it in the first place is a massive achievement. So, you know, even if you only stay like 15 minutes or half an hour or something, the fact that you've done that is fantastic. And, you know, it's fine if you then need to leave, because the fact that you've gone is like much more important than the fact that you're having to leave early. I always think it's important at Christmas, especially when you have mental health issues, to make sure you're not completely isolating yourself. So I will always try and plan like a few social activities, and if I kind of take the sort of, I don't know, responsibility I suppose of planning them, it means I can plan things that I feel like I can cope with. So I don't know, I might plan to like meet up with a friend and have a coffee, or have a friend over to watch a Christmas film, or like this year we've planned like with the family to go to the pantomime, and kind of making sure I've got like a few different like social activities over the Christmas period can be enough just to make sure that I'm like, yeah, not a complete hermit, and I'm not avoiding everybody, and I am getting that social interaction, because sometimes I think just being able to be around a few people, like especially if it's people that are close to you and that you trust, being able to spend time with them can be really important and can help just to like lift your mood a bit and make you feel like you're part of Christmas. Because I don't know, I think with mental illness it can often feel like you're watching on from the sidelines. So trying to get involved in a few like social things that feel comfortable to you, I've found anyway, can be really helpful. However, I would also say make sure that you plan some time just for you to relax, because as much as you need those social interactions and you need to be around people, I think it's also really important to have some me time. And I think it can be quite, you know, I find if I don't plan my me time, it just doesn't happen. So whether it's putting a film on that you really like, sitting and reading a good book, having a bubble bath, just doing something that you want to do and that helps you relax a bit, because Christmas can just be so stressful and so busy that it can be quite difficult to find time to just be. And for me, that's really important with my mental health, because having those like relaxation times just helps me stop getting completely overwhelmed and completely like getting really anxious and yeah, finding it too much. So definitely plan some me time in amongst your social like engagements. It's also really important to talk about how you're feeling with people, and it can be sometimes, I suppose it can be quite difficult to find the right person to talk to, especially if everyone else seems to be really excited for Christmas. You often feel like, oh, I don't want to like bring them down with my worries or like my how I'm feeling really down about Christmas and stuff, but there will be someone to listen to you, whether that is someone in your family, a close friend, or if like you really can't find anyone in those kind of circles, if you've got a therapist, like they're a really good person to talk to. But if you don't have a therapist, there are so many charities that have like what do you call them, phone lines, so like the Samaritans and Mind. I'll make sure I put some links in the description bar for those kind of things. But just having someone to like offload to and to actually say, look, I'm really not enjoying Christmas at the moment, I'm finding this hard, or you know, it's a hard time of year for me, because just being able to get those things off your chest is really important, because otherwise you end up like building them all up inside and not talking about them, and it's just going to make your mental health worse and you're just going to end up feeling worse. So I don't know, I think talking is really, really important, and finding the right person as well. So if you try one person and it doesn't work, or you kind of don't click with them, like try someone else. I find it really good to email the Samaritans because I'm not very good at talking on the phone. So over the years I've emailed them quite a lot, and yes, it's not instant, but I can work out in my head what I want to say, and then I get an email back from them like a day or two later. So there's so many different ways that you can offload to people, and it's really important to just find one that works for you. Something that's probably, you know, common sense, but I'm going to include it anyway, is to make sure you get proper sleep. Now, I am the first to admit that I am not very good at this. I stay up late and then I end up lying in quite late. And especially over Christmas, when you're like, if you're going out quite late in the evenings, or you've got lots of like busy stuff going on, sleep can often be the first thing that kind of suffers and goes. But it's, well, I know for me and for everybody really, it's so important to just get a decent night's sleep, because the less sleep you have, the more like grouchy and crappy you're gonna feel, and it's not gonna help your mental health. So yeah, just make sure like you try and get yourself into a routine of getting like, I don't know, 7 or 8 hours sleep, or whatever you feel you need. Whether it's using an eye mask or a sleep spray, or having like a bedtime routine to help you kind of wind down. Anything that helps you just get a few good hours of sleep is gonna put you on a good like footing for dealing with your mental health over the Christmas period. I also find it really helpful at this time of year just to get outside, whether that's going for a walk or going out in my wheelchair, or even just going out in the garden for a few minutes and feeling like fresh air. In the summer we're like always out and about and, you know, getting out in the sunshine and stuff, whereas in the winter I don't know, because it's colder and the weather's crap, we don't get out and about as much. And I find if I'm stuck in the house for a long time, it really affects my mental health. I start feeling a lot more depressed and just down and despondent. And even literally just going and standing in my garden for a few minutes, I'm feeling like the cold air on my face and looking at like the trees or like the frost on the grass. It just, I don't know what, it kind of gives me a bit of a like boost. And yeah, I know like not everyone can go out for a walk or whatever it is, but just trying to like, even if you can just open the window and get a bit of like fresh air on your face, I really think it helps. And especially if you are able to like go out for a bit of a walk or go out in your wheelchair, I think getting away from the house and away from the busyness of like shopping and TV and all that kind of stuff, it just kind of helps you switch off a bit and get away from that buzz and relax and calm down. And then when you go back, you kind of feel a little bit more refreshed. Sorry, my battery just cut out. So yeah, what I was saying is I just think getting outside can just help you reset, and then when you come back you just feel a bit more refreshed and ready to get back to the craziness of Christmas. This next point might seem a little bit preachy, but I think it's really important, and I would always advise like limiting your alcohol intake over the Christmas period. Obviously this varies depending on like whether you drink or whether you don't drink. I'm not a big drinker, but do tend to find over Christmas, because there's more of it about and because you go to more situations where people are drinking, I do tend to drink more. And I know from past experience of being a bit younger that, you know, I would maybe drink a bit too much, and, you know, alcohol is actually a depressant. So although it might make you feel good to begin with, it then gets to the point where you don't feel so good anymore. So I would just, yeah, recommend drinking in moderation. You know, don't completely avoid alcohol if you're able to drink it, but at the same time, don't go silly and just end up feeling worse than you started out feeling. And then my last 2 points for general mental health are more like, I suppose, acceptance points. So the first one is to just be okay with the fact that you don't necessarily feel excited, or the fact that you're not looking forward to Christmas. Yes, this whole like image is portrayed around Christmas that everyone loves it and everyone's excited and everyone's got like family and friends to spend time with, and that just isn't the case. And even if you have got like family and friends to spend time with, you can still just not feel excited about it. You know, if you've got depression or anxiety or anything like that, you're already struggling to feel motivated to just get through normal life. So why put pressure on ourselves to think that you're going to feel like amazing about Christmas when actually it's just bringing a hell of a lot more stress. Like, usually, yes, there are nice things about it as well, but you know, if you really don't feel excited about it, don't beat yourself up about it, because you don't have to feel excited. And there are so many people out there that probably don't feel excited about Christmas and they don't really talk about it. So, you know, don't put the pressure on yourself. You know, just take it as another day and get through however you can. Try and find enjoyment in little things, but just don't put pressure on yourself to make it this amazing Christmas if you're just really not feeling that way. And my last point would be to look at the bigger picture. And this is something that we were often told, like when I was in hospital and by my psychologist. Basically, you know, Christmas is essentially one day, like one day out of 365 days in the year. And yes, it does have a big build up, which doesn't help a lot of the time. I mean, I quite like the build up, but it can be quite overwhelming to have like a month or more of like Christmas, Christmas, Christmas. But Christmas is Christmas Day, basically. And, you know, there are 364 other days in the year. So just think about that fact that, you know, you don't have to put loads and loads of effort into just one day. You know, if you're struggling to get through the rest of the year, just look at it as another day. And yes, it might be a bit different, but by the end of that day, it's done for another year, and you can kind of try and start getting back to normal and continue to like work on your mental health. So it just tries to put things in perspective a little bit, of like not being this huge thing. I don't know, if I'm struggling with it, I do just keep sitting there saying to myself, it's only one day, okay, I can get through this, and then we're back to tomorrow and it's back to normal again. So I'm now going to move on to like specific eating disorder advice. A lot of this stuff I picked up when I was in day patient treatment for my eating disorder, and also when I was an inpatient many years ago. And also, like, I suppose like through that I spoke to other people with eating disorders, and these were some of the tips that they came up with. So they might not work for everybody, but this is stuff that I found kind of helpful to follow or to keep in mind. So my first tip would be to eat regularly. I mean, that is a tip for eating disorder treatment anywhere, but especially at Christmas, meal times can be a bit all over the place. So if you're maybe, I don't know, going somewhere, or even if it's at your house and you know there's going to be like a big gap between breakfast and dinner or something, like make sure you have got your own food or your own snacks or whatever, to make sure that you can kind of continue to eat regularly. Because the worst thing that I found was leaving too long between meals, and then you start getting really hungry, and then for me, I would get really anxious about the fact that I was really hungry, and either I would end up like binging because I'd got too hungry, or I would end up like then not eating, because I'd like gone a certain amount of time with not eating and I couldn't then get back into eating, if that makes sense. So yeah, eat regularly. So usually if you're in eating disorder treatment, you would have a meal plan which is kind of agreed between you and the people that are treating you. So if you have got a meal plan and this is what feels safest for you, then by all means I would say stick to your normal meal plan. If you really can't, if you're in a point where you really can't see yourself like changing your meal plan up for Christmas, there's nothing wrong with just sticking with your normal meal plan. I kind of found this on special occasions, like especially at the beginning of my eating disorder treatment. A big meal or a different type of meal or setup would completely throw me off, and it would set me back and everything. So my nurses and stuff would often just say to me, just stick to the meal plan that you already follow. And yes, you kind of feel a bit different because not everyone's following the same thing as you, but for me it felt safest because I knew what I was doing. I'd been doing it every day. It didn't feel like extra scary when I couldn't cope with it, and yeah, it just worked for me at the time. I would say though, if you feel able to and you kind of are at that point and you've agreed it with your treatment team, if you can switch up your meal plan a bit to include sort of different things from sort of Christmassy food bits, then I would definitely try doing that. But make sure you kind of plan what you're going to do in advance, because the worst thing for me was like having things sprung upon me, whereas if I planned my treats and stuff like that in, it helped. So like rather than having, I don't know, like my biscuits for a snack, I would switch them up for a mince pie, or like rather than having like what I usually would have for my dinner or my lunch, I would switch it up and make sure that I could have some of the like roast turkey and things like that. And it just meant that I kind of felt like I was part of Christmas that everyone else was doing, and that I was kind of enjoying it as much as you can when you're trying to recover from an eating disorder. But it also felt safe because it was planned and because I'd agreed it with my treatment team and stuff. So don't deny yourself those treats if you feel you can manage them. Obviously, if you're right at the beginning of eating disorder treatment, or if you're in a point where you're really struggling, then don't feel bad if you can't like switch it up. But I always found it was quite a good way of like, yeah, just feeling part of like normal life. I would also say try really hard not to label foods as good and bad. And I mean, this was something that was kind of drummed into us throughout eating disorder treatment anyway, because it can often be quite like a big part of an eating disorder is having like good and bad foods. And I think especially at Christmas, when you have like a lot of different foods and maybe like treats and things like that, it can be very easy to be like, oh, I can't have a mince pie because that's bad. But it's all right if I have some vegetables because they're good. And we were always told, you know, there is no such thing as good and bad foods. It's just eating stuff in moderation. So don't deny yourself like nice foods basically, because you know, they aren't good or bad, and if you put them into your plan, you know, it's fine, basically, is what I'm trying to say. And I know it's not that easy when you're in that mindset, because I remember it so vividly, you know, like looking at, I don't know, I keep bringing up a mince pie, but looking at a mince pie and thinking, oh, I wish I could eat that, but I can't. You know, it's not a bad food. You know, yes, if you sit and eat like 3 whole packets of mince pies, then maybe it's not so great. But, you know, 1 mince pie as like your snack, it's not bad. It's, you know, it's what everyone else is doing as well. So, yeah, just like look around at what everyone else is eating. That always used to help me, because I'd be like, well, they're all having mince pies and they're not worrying about it, so I can have one too. Going back to the meal plan, I would really recommend planning it and preparing it well in advance. So I don't know whether if you're in eating disorder treatment or even if you're not, like sit down with the people that you'll be spending Christmas with and go through what your meal plan is going to be for those days, whether it's like, I don't know, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, Boxing Day, whatever different days you need to be like planning with. So I would sit down with my family and we would go through my meal plan, write it all down, exactly what I would be eating, even like sometimes down to like portion sizes and stuff like that. And because I had sat down with my family and agreed it with them, on the actual day there wasn't any kind of like arguments of like, oh, I'm not eating that, it's not on my plate, like I don't want to eat, you know, like the arguments that come with an eating disorder of like what you're eating and stuff. They weren't there because we had sat down in advance and planned like exactly what I would be eating, and it just took some of that stress out of like those nice days. So yes, I would still feel anxious about eating, and that wasn't going to go away, but there weren't the arguments, and it meant that everyone else in the family could enjoy their Christmas dinners and stuff without me sitting there like, I'm not eating that, or no, that's too much and stuff like that. So I would definitely prepare well in advance just to reduce like arguments and stress and all that kind of stuff. If you are going away to like extended families, or if you've got extended family coming to you, I would really recommend speaking to a close relative, so whether it's your mum, your dad, your partner, and maybe asking them to speak to your extended family before you go and see them, or before they come and see you. I often found that if I don't know, if I saw people that I didn't know, or if I was eating with people I didn't know, they might make comments which they probably thought were helpful, but actually they really weren't. So they might talk about like, oh, you've put weight on, you look really good, or like, oh, you're eating a really good meal. And comments like that, especially when you're trying to sit down and eat a meal, are really not that helpful when you're trying to recover from an eating disorder. So it can be quite helpful if you have got someone that you trust, if they can just have a little chat with like your extended family and just say like, oh, you know, is it all right if you just don't mention like weight or food while you're around Jenny, because it's just not going to be very helpful and it'll end up causing tension and all that kind of stuff. And usually that worked quite well, and it meant I wasn't worrying about what they might say, they weren't worrying about what they would say to me, and it just made things a lot less stressful for everybody involved. Something that I found really helpful is to have a list of distractions for after meals, and this can apply like any time, not just necessarily Christmas. But I often found that after meals were really, really difficult. I had a lot of problems with making myself sick, and so I would eat and then I would feel like all I could think about was like, I need to get rid of this food basically. So I found it really, really helpful having a list of distractions, whether it's written down or whether it's just in your head, of things I could do after my meal to try and take my mind off those like negative thoughts and like urges and stuff. So whether it was watching a film or playing a game with someone or doing some colouring or writing a letter, listening to music, like anything that you kind of find is helpful for taking your mind off that kind of thing. Yeah, I just found it invaluable for after meal times, and especially when you've had like, you know, a Christmas dinner or maybe something that's a bit out of like your norm, then it can be quite helpful to just have something to do after the meal to kind of try and take your mind off those thoughts. Also, during meals can be quite difficult, obviously, because you're trying to eat, and especially if you've got people over, or even if you're just with your family, when everyone's eating and it's very quiet, you can feel like everyone is watching you and watching what you eat. And I used to find I would get really, really paranoid about people watching me eat. So it was quite helpful to have just some music on in the background. When I was in eating disorder treatment, we would also always have the radio or some music or something on while we ate our meals, and it just took away that like awkward silence, and I found it quite helpful. And we also used to have like conversation cards on the table, which is something that a lot of people do at Christmas like anyway, just to kind of, for a bit of fun. So it doesn't have to be like, oh, she's got an eating disorder, so we've got like conversation cards. Like you can get some really fun ones. And again, it just takes away like any kind of triggering conversation around meals, and is quite a good distraction like as you're trying to eat, and it means other people are talking and you just don't feel like that pressure is on what you're eating. Something that I was recommended again when I was in eating disorder treatment was to have a supporter, and this sounds very official, but actually, you know, it can be anybody. It can be your mum, your dad, a brother, a sister, a partner, just someone that knows you well, that you can trust, who can look out for you kind of during situations that might be difficult for you. So either situation like eating at home, or if you're out and like with family or friends or something, someone who can kind of see if you're struggling. You can perhaps say something like a word to them and they know that you need a bit of help or that you need to get out of that situation. And it's just having someone there that you know is looking out for you and you know has got your back. So if, yeah, I don't know, if something difficult happens and you kind of be like, you can just like whisper to them like, I need to get out. You know, they could say, oh, should we go off to the toilet for a minute and like powder our nose or whatever. And it's just someone else there, so you don't feel like you're completely alone with trying to deal with your eating disorder, and that you have got that support there. A really important point that I would make is to make sure that you continue to follow your normal meal plan after Christmas. It can be very, very tempting if you've had Christmas dinner and things have been a bit different and you might feel guilty for what you've eaten, or you might feel like you've eaten too much, to then go on and restrict or cut things out of your meal plan in the days like following Christmas. And although it might make you feel good at the time, in the long run it's not helping your recovery. So as hard as it can be, when things start to get back to normal, just go back to your normal meal plan and try your best to keep following that. Because like I know from experience, if I started trying to like restrict or trying to like make up for feelings of guilt and stuff, it just was very easy to then spiral. And you know, if you're trying to recover from an eating disorder, it's not going to help you. Talk about your feelings of guilt to whoever you can. You know, say that you're finding it hard to stick to your normal meal plan, but if you can, like, try everything to just get back to normal and get back on plan again. And yeah, talk about the feelings, but don't let them translate back into the food again. And my last point would just be to try and be kind to yourself. And I know this is so hard when you've got any kind of mental health problem, but just don't beat yourself up. You know, Christmas is meant to be a nice time. You know, it isn't always, and I know that, but yes, if you've eaten some pigs in blankets and you normally wouldn't, try not to beat yourself up about it. You know, it's one day, everyone else was doing it, you deserve to be able to eat nice food as well. Just keep telling yourself that, and keep telling yourself that you are beating the eating disorder and not the other way around. I know it's really hard and I still struggle to be nice to myself, but I just have to keep reminding myself that, you know, I deserve food, I deserve to have nice experiences just like everybody else, and the same goes for you. So that is all of my tips. There's been quite a lot there. I really hope that they might help someone else that's kind of struggling with a mental health problem over this Christmas period. If you've got any tips you want to share, please leave them in the comments below. It would be really good if we could kind of try and help each other. And yeah, if there's any other kind of mental health related videos you'd be interested in seeing, please let me know. If you've enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And I really, really hope you have a good Christmas and that it isn't too stressful and that you can just get through it. I know you can get through it, but yeah, I just hope that it goes all right and, you know, you've got the support that you need. And, you know, drop me a message on social media if you just need someone to chat to, because I'm usually on social media. So yeah, just take care of yourself over Christmas, and I will see you again in another video very soon. Bye.